I got so many fake friends. Oh my God, I hate them. I spray them with my ray gun and take one vacation. I got so many fake friends. Oh my God, I hate them. I spray them with my ray gun and take one vacation. Escape them.
With regards to institutions and why strong institutions are necessary, I think institutions, if you build strong institutions, they can survive with or without the particular leader who builds them in power, essentially. So institutions are necessary for continuation. Institutions are necessary for nation building. You can very rarely find any developed nation, any developed state that does not have strong institutions. And strong institutions means lots of things, you know, from the rule of law to institutions with regards to punishing criminal offenders, public office holders who maybe are into corrupt practices, punishing them without being biased. That's very important. So institutions typically should be non-partial. Institutions should be non-partisan. You know, institutions should be very neutral in ensuring that their main goal is for ensuring positive continuation, ensuring growth in a country, in an economy, you know. And I think President Obama a couple of years ago had mentioned something about Africa needing strong institutions and not strong men. And regardless of what you think about that statement or not, I think it's very important to realize that institutions are very key, you know, from the grassroots. And building institutions, it's not only about, say, oh, the central bank is an institution, maybe the ministries is institutions. Institution goes all the way down to the grassroots, you know, looking at way of revenue collection at the grassroots level, at the sub-national level, at the national level. Those are all institutions. Institutions in terms of even things like, let's say, getting your passport. These are all institutions that if they function well, it pretty much eliminates the need for corruption, the need for bribery. Because if these things work well, if these things are digitalized, like I mentioned at the start, you don't have to go there and pay someone a certain amount to get your passport, pay someone a certain amount to get your license. You know, all those are part of corruption. And strong institutions are self-correcting most times. However, it takes a lot of effort to build them and to sustain them, you know, because if you have an institution that has a strong man and the strong man leaves, that institution is likely to falter because it was only strong because of a strong man. However, if you have strong institutions, if a weak leader comes in, that institution would take that weak leader out because it's not the right fit for that type of institution. So in that sense, institutions can be self-correcting, you know. So I think that was a summation of that publication with regards to what certain African countries need. And I think I gave a couple of examples. I think I used perhaps Nigeria, I think Rwanda, a couple of countries as examples of having strong institutions. And also when people see the results of the institutions, they're more likely to have trust in them because trust is very key in public institutions. Without trust, an institution loses its essence, it loses its value. Once people feel as though this institution is only going after certain groups of people, it's going at it's doing political persecution, it's going at maybe religious persecution, ethnic persecution, whatever it is, people lose trust in it. You know, the faith erodes. So it's very important that you build public trust and you maintain that public trust by delivering results consistently, which I think is what a lot of African countries need. And to build that, again, you have to go back to capacity building. You have to have people who buy into it, people who are committed into it, and you have to make sure that the veto players, who are usually the most essential people in the decision-making process, they also have to be in on it. Once there is disconnect among veto players, you begin to see that institutions don't grow as they should or don't thrive as they should. And lastly, I think with regards to the most recent one on climate adaptation in Africa, I think climate change has been a big topic for the past 10, 12, 15 years thereabout. And of course, prior to that, however, in the past decade or so, it's featured prominently. And Africa turns out to be the country that has contributed less in terms of greenhouse emission gases. And I think the number stands with around 3% or not. However, Africa bears the biggest brunt of this climate I don't want to call it catastrophic because that makes it seem really bad, but it is a bad situation that is currently being faced by lots of countries. However, I think you can look at it from the mitigation perspective, you can look at it from the adaptation perspective, and I think lots of funds need to go into the adaptation process where countries adapt, and that way their economies also adapt to it. Because if you're looking at countries whose economies depend on, say, greenhouse emission gases, production from greenhouse emission gases, and you're telling them to transition, that sounds a bit problematic, because then what do they transition to? Are the funds there? Is the economy ready to transition? And that transition means that there will be job losses. How are you accounting for that? Would the job losses be in the short term, in the intermediate term, or in the long term? How are you addressing that? And a lot of financing needs to go into this. And I think a lot of African leaders have spoken about it, given the various challenges that their countries are facing. And I think it's very important that that is dealt with adequately. And moving on from that, I think there's the AAAP, that African Union, and I believe is the African Development Bank. But I know one of these institutions is working on with regards to developing a framework for adaptation for African countries. And it's a good initiative. However, a lot of commitment needs to be done. It's not just to build a framework, but commitment and actual practicalization of it. And the Western countries have made commitments to certain funds, but the actual funds have not been delivered yet. So you see, it's just empty accounts, I would say. So I think it's very important that those accounts, those commitments are made true by the countries who have committed to financing it and funding it, actually do make true on their commitments by building these funds for climate adaptation, as well as for other climate-related issues, climate resilience, climate mitigation. Because if you noticed, or if you have seen, a lot of the coastal area of West Africa is eroding, taking it from Senegal going all the way down to Guinea. There's been a lot of coastal erosion, and I think all of these need a lot of funding to ensure adaptation. And the adaptation also should come with jobs, and those jobs should also be productive jobs as well, that also do lead into the economy. Because I think the blue economy as a whole is a very important sector of our economies that is not harnessed as it should be. You know, for the most part, it's just using for import and export, and then fishing. And that fishing even comes with a lot of challenges with who is doing the fishing, in certain cases where foreign countries have been accused of, you know, doing fishing practices that are not ethical or not proper. However, I think the blue economy, there is a lot that can be gained from it, and not just from the revenue perspective, but from a productive capacity perspective of nationals and those who live around the coastal cities, coastal areas. I think a lot needs to be done. So yes, that paper, essentially, that publication was focusing on climate adaptation issues. And I think I did mention Nigeria being a case study, Gambia being a case study, Kenya being a case study as well. And there are lots of case studies you can find across Africa with regards to adaptation, what is being done, you know, with regards to reversing certain processes, with regards to preemptive measures as to what is happening. So I think a lot needs to be done. I know there's been the talk about the potential project of making the Sahara Desert green. I forgot the exact term or the exact name that's been used for it. But so there are lots of initiatives, lots of proposals, lots of frameworks. However, these need to translate into actual work. It needs to translate into solutions, because you're talking about human lives at stake, human livelihoods at stake. So this is not just a game of what ifs, but what is happening and what should be done going forward. So that's the summation of the climate adaptation paper.
Excellent, excellent. You asked me right at the beginning of right at the end of your summation of the first essay, if I have any questions. Sorry, the reason I didn't ask was purely because of the amount of the limited amount of time we have to do this. I wish we could talk about this for however long, but we don't want to hold these viewers hostage. though I do have one question before we go about that. No, not a question, shall I say, it's a comment about that second essay talking about institutions. And I'm glad you brought up digitizing government, because it actually feeds into some research that we've been doing on digital public infrastructure as a service, as a service building block, if you will, for not just the government, not just the private sector, but also the government. And it's something that I feel anybody watching this should read up on in terms of its role in building strong institutions, because strong institutions doesn't just mean government policies or bills or laws that go into that go into checks and balances, but also the actual infrastructure that comes into building government operations itself. So and I'm sure you'll agree on that. If you have any comments on that.
No, I agree on that. And I did read your publication. I think it was maybe last month or about 2 months ago on digital public infrastructure. They're about digitalizing government services. I think it's very fundamental. I think one, moving away from the era of pen and paper, moving away from the era of doing things very manually, because these things come with a lot of drawbacks and challenges. And like I mentioned, these are also avenues for corruption where things have been done manually, where you have to go to a physical office to deliver a paper, deliver an application. Yeah. If these things can be digitalized from the infrastructure perspective, not just the end result, but like you said, the actual infrastructure, the back end, the background of things where government services are done efficiently, government transfer of social service payments to recipients are done digitally, electronically. Someone who is, let's say, 70 to 75-year-old awaiting pension does not have to go to a bank and queue up for hours or go to a government institution and queue up for hours. If these things can be transferred electronically from, maybe if it's mobile transfer, if it's bank transfer, they receive it in their accounts, and if they need to use a card or however they withdraw it, these things make things more efficient. Likewise, even things like health, the health system could be digitalized digitized in terms of ensuring that there is a comprehensive and accurate database of those who are benefiting from, say, government health insurance. These programs, it makes it much more efficient. That way, even if one misplaces their card, they know that their names and numbers and every other important detail is in a particular database. And it just means that it's more efficient. Likewise, you can say the same thing for ID cards, passports, a lot of issues. But as we know, because some of these this digital infrastructure are not present, it means that if one loses such a key important document, it's a hassle to get it back. And then it goes back to the point of the corruption, where you have to pay someone an extra amount just to get your application in or something of that sort. I think it's high time we move past that. So I definitely agree with you. The digitalization process of not just fintech or that's just payments, but just basic services is high time. It's way overdue. And I think if the talents and skills of youth can be utilized, it can have a very revolutionary impact in Africa. So I think you agree with me on that one.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah. Going back to youth and bringing everything full circle. I see what you did there, but we'll get into that at another time, because that concludes today's interview. Thank you very much, Francis, Mr. Aubee. Maybe soon they'll start calling you Mr. Aubee now, but that time, they'll be calling us Mr. by that time. And then we'll say that we knew each other from before this was even recorded. But
that's right.
With that being said, thank you very much for your time, your great insights, and also for even the reason that you're here, which is the service you're doing to Africa's development sector, African youth. We applaud you for it, and we're very glad that you were able to come on here, be a guest, share some of your knowledge with us. Very happy to have you, my man. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Greg. Thank you, my brother. It's been a good couple of years since Kings, and I'm glad to see the work you're doing as well in Nairobi. And I'm in Addis, so we're not far away from each other. So hopefully we get to catch up soon. But I'm really appreciative and supportive of the work that you're doing. So keep it up as well. And I think this is very important. And I think these conversations are important to have and just share, and more so that hopefully policymakers, stakeholders can get in on these conversations and see the impact and input that we have to share as well. So thank you very much for having me, and hope to see you soon. Take care.
Yeah, take care, man. Bye. Bye, everyone.
I got so many fake friends. Oh my God, I hate them. I spray them with my ray gun, then take one vacation, escape them. Been A1 since day one, so don't waste your hate on me. Can't take the weight from me. Focus on pay, homie. Real niggas, they know me. Respect my vibration.